stay a little longer?
Yeah, I got a long trip ahead of me.
2 hours? I'll give you another $10,000. Please.
In my very biased opinion, Breaking Bad is something of a miracle of television. It's a methodical, meticulously plotted, ever-evolving piece of work that is as artful as it is deliberate, and its ability to manifest in payoff throughout its run is outstanding, partly due to the sheer legwork it puts in to make those moments feel truly earned. As a result, it's understandable that its most talked about episodes tend to be the incredibly grand or dramatic ones. The pulsating tension of 1 minute, perhaps, or the bone-chilling conclusion to Crawl Space. And who could forget the iconic farewell to Gustavo Fring in Face Off? But one of my absolute favorite episodes in the entire series is one that is comparatively quieter. Of course, it isn't at all devoid of deep drama or shock, but the way it approaches it makes it relatively low-key in comparison to a lot of the most adored entries. Yet that is not a bad thing in any sense, and in fact, all of that works to its extreme benefit. Granite State is the penultimate episode in the series, and in my experience, while it is widely acknowledged to be great, it's still somewhat of a neglected, under-discussed middle sibling, sandwiched in between two of the greatest examples of those popular epics I mentioned. The near-perfectly fitting series finale, Felina, and the horrific crescendo of the most notorious episode in the series, Ozymandias. But personally, I think this one is just as amazing and effective as both its predecessor and successor. Granite State, like many other episode titles in the series, can be interpreted to have a dual meaning to it. It's named after the nickname of the state of New Hampshire, the one that Walt hides out in after calling Ed the Vacuum Man. But it can also refer to the actual state of granite, which is a type of rock that is very hard, unyielding, and blunt. I could be overthinking things here, but I think that this can pretty accurately refer to the approach that this episode takes, with things seeming to be in a state of petrification. Granite State is an uncomfortably long look at the awful state of things now that the action has ended. Like a painful, lingering shot of the aftermath of the tragedy that's unfolded. And there's something deeply harrowing about that sort of thing that strikes a different emotional chord than Ozymandias did previously. It is absolutely terrifying and stunningly tragic to see the events that have been building up from episode 1 crash down on Walter and the rest of the cast in Ozymandias. But there's something profound about the quiet horror and stillness of witnessing the events after the dust settles. This is where reality sets in for Walt. This isn't a fever dream. This is your life. Your empire is gone. Hank is gone. Your family is destroyed, and you've ruined your son's life and image of his father. You can't even control Saul anymore, and your cancer will kill you sooner rather than later. You've lost, the jig is up, and you have no power anymore. The quiet, snowy solitude of Walt's living quarters seemed to scream this out at him and the audience at every opportunity. And as such, this calm is agonizing, and it's no wonder that he pays Ed an exorbitant amount just to keep him company for an hour. And the one thing to break that pathetic, sorrowful repose is the quiet, yet deafening ping of a silenced pistol in the dead of night. A signifier that for Jesse, his hell is just beginning. But we spend the majority of the episode away from him, and as such, it is the implication of what is happening to him and what he's going through that hurts the most, and it's that hangs in the air, just as much as Walter's resignation and loneliness. And it's not only that. We see how everything else is left in ruin. Jack's gang has run off with the money and threatened Walt's family. Skylar is a shell, and Walter Jr. is left distressed and traumatized. Marie is dealing with losing the love of her life. Everyone is recovering from the initial shock of their situations and facing up to the magnitude of their pain. Ozymandias is the end result of the decisions made earlier in the series, but Granite State is the aftermath, and because of this, it's almost more agonizing. You know the experience of having a terrible dream? Imagine the worst possible nightmare, the scariest thing you can think of. Think of how devastating it can feel to experience that. Now, you know that sense of unbelievable relief that washes over you when you wake up and realize that it was all just a dream? Think about how it would feel to instead wake up and realize that everything that happened was real. You awake the next morning and have to live with the consequences of what happened. You have to confront this truth and somehow push yourself to keep going. The non-stop devastation of Ozymandias is almost numbing, but it's a constant storm that doesn't seriously ponder what life looks like after the tragedy. Granite State eliminates the possibility of this being a nightmare, and in some ways, that makes it worse than the actual nightmare. Because as any one of these characters, you must live with yourself in mundanity, now that things are over, with nothing to distract you from the fact that this is just how things are. And in the wake of such painful stillness, it's easy to just give up. Walter very nearly did. He wanted to put things right, or to at least make an attempt to fix something, but it was just too difficult. His son wouldn't accept his money, he couldn't contact anyone else, and he was a nationwide fugitive. But in the last moment, one twist of fate changes that. Because in seeing the people he hates and envies talk about him with such condescension, hand-waving his contributions, Walter is able to muster up the last bit of seething rage and motivation in his body. And from the embers, he concocts one last plan. One that will result in his vengeance towards those who have wronged him, and in the financial security of his family. It doesn't fix anything, but it just ensures that this wasn't all a waste. And in spite of his pettiness, in spite of the terrible things he did, and of how prideful and disgusting he became, we were on this journey along with him. And in the last sequence of the episode, as the main theme plays and the shot lingers on his unfinished whiskey glass, signifying that he isn't quite finished yet, it's hard not to feel just a little bit of gratification and exhilaration for this last push. And that is the brilliance of Granite State. It makes the horrifying mundane and accustoms us to a monotonous hell, and it reflects on all of this to not hold back and show us how real things are, only to pick us right back up for one more ride. You can't have the fireworks without the fuse, and that's what Granite State is. It provides a landing platform for Ozymandias and a launch pad for Felina, all the while being an eye-opening, poetic illustration of just the type of devastating nothingness that Walter White's quest for power ultimately led to. Many thanks for watching.